Hello, everybody. I'm back again. This is Miss Owens, the SPF from D.W. Carter High School, and I am here to give you some updates on MTSS and SST and the verification process. So this will serve as your staff training. Make sure that you sign in, please. You must be signed in with your Dallas ISD credentials in order to access the sign-in sheet. I have also included it in your email, but make sure that you sign in, please, because that way I know that you have received this training. All right, so let's get into it. It's the clarification of the MTSS/SST verification process. And the core idea for today is that you will understand your role in the MTSS/SST verification process, and that you will also understand that it's not a gateway to special education services, but it is a framework to help all students be successful, okay? Because we're not just trying to get kids evaluated, but we're using interventions that can help all students in the classroom. Okay, there is board policy on this, so I have updated the links on here, so you should be able to, you won't be able to click on them in the video, but you will be able to click on them in the PowerPoint presentation that I shared with you in the email in which this video was sent. Please make sure you pause the screen to read. Now we have the evaluation in the law. There is an administrative code, but I want to make sure that I read the highlights of this code. If the highlights are: referral for possible special education services must be part of the district's general education screening system. Students having difficulties in general education should be considered for support services available to all students. So not just those kids that you feel like are suffering or struggling with learning, but it could be somebody that, well, is struggling, but I'm not necessarily going to refer them for SPED, but I do want to go into the system to see if I can find interventions that could help them. Okay. Interventions that you can use is tutoring, evidence-based interventions, and other academic behavioral supports. Okay. Students are not required to be provided with interventions for a specific length of time prior to a referral being made. So if you recall here in Dallas ISD, we have had to, usually we're told, okay, it has to be 6 to 12 weeks of interventions before you can refer for special education. That is not the case anymore, according to this new code. Last bullet, students continuing to experience difficulties with the provision of interventions, that meaning you are doing some kind of interventions, they're still struggling, they may be referred for a full initial and individual evaluation. Parent requests. So pay close attention, because we have had parents bring letters saying, I would like my child to be evaluated for a special education. So a parent, legal guardian, or another individual involved in the education of the student may submit a request in writing for a full initial and individual evaluation. So here's what happens after that. No later than 15 instructional days, the district must provide the parent with prior written notice of proposal to conduct an evaluation, procedural safeguards, which are their parental rights, and an opportunity to give written consent, or provide the parent with prior written notice of refusal and a copy of the procedural safeguards. So the SST committee, and I am the SST chair, student support team chair, the committee should meet with the parent after written notification to discuss as a team the difficulties observed, interventions tried, and the need for an evaluation. Parental written notice does not automatically mean that the student will be evaluated for a disability and a need for special education services. Okay, let's look at the difference between a learning gap and a learning disability. So a learning gap is a disparity between what the student has mastered and what he or she is expected to master for that grade level. And so we have students who have learning gaps. But let's look at what a disability is, a learning disability. This is a disorder in one or more basic psychological processes which may manifest in an inability to listen, speak, write, read, or do math. Okay, so there is a difference between having just a learning gap that we can make up perhaps in tutoring with interventions, and a learning disability that's like, hey, I've done interventions, we've done tutoring, and still the child is not making those meeting those progress marks and goals that we have set for them. All right, so let's look at the line of delineation. So here's what happens when we are like, I think that there could be something going on here. So I am also not only the SST chair, the student support team chair, I'm also the MTSS chair. Multi-tiered systems of support is what MTSS stands for. So when I'm concerned about a student and their progress or lack thereof, I can start the MTSS process. And the step number one is that you would meet with the student support team. So get in touch with me as the chairperson, and we would meet to identify the gap and the movement between the tiers, tier 1 students, tier 2 students, tier 3 students, depending on the level of severity of whatever the concern is. Okay. And we would determine what would be an appropriate intervention to hopefully help that student make up that gap. Then step 2, interventions are implemented to support closing the engagement or the instructional gap. Okay. And then, so we're like, is this just a gap, or are we moving towards this could be a disability? So that's the reason for the interventions that you would be sent away from the SST meeting with to implement with that student. Step number 3, the SST team reconvenes to discuss the student progress and next steps if the multi-tiered system of support has been exhausted. So I've tried these interventions. It is clearly not working. And here's my data to support that. Step 4, if the student support team or the SST determines that the student may benefit from special services, we will begin the MTSS verification process. Okay. Step 5, we will complete the MTSS verification process. Now, I'm going to explain it to you in the roles and responsibilities next. But again, once we have that SST meeting, we will discuss all of this. Okay. This is just an overview of what's to take place and the changes that we have now in our district. Step number 6, once the principal and ED have verified the MTSS process, special services is notified. So that's new. Usually you would meet with the SST team, or you would come to the person that's the chairperson and say, this is what's happening. You guys would do interventions, and we would give, okay, you have to do them for 6 to 12 weeks, and then we'll document, and then we call the diagnostician and all that. These are the new steps. So we have to involve the principal and the ED, and they will look to make sure that the proper steps have been input into the system and that all of that is in place. But we'll get into a little bit later of the other things that they have to do. And then special services referral consideration is at that point. Until IEP services are initiated, the MTSS intervention is required. That's the last bulleted note here. An IEP, individual education plan. That means if the student is found to have a learning disability and is going to come under the umbrella of special education, until that happens, you're still implementing those interventions from that we have talked about as an SST team during our MTSS meeting. Okay, here are the roles and responsibilities of the MTSS verification. Multi-tiered systems of support is what MTSS stands for once again. Okay, so here we go. We have the responsible party and the action items. I would like for you to pause the screen here so you can read, but me being the SST chair, I'll briefly go over this. I initiate the verification process by accessing the MTSS verification dashboard. That means you've come to me with a student that has a concern. We set up an SST meeting, and I go in and I start adding information into the MTSS verification dashboard. Okay. And then I want you to see the action items that you will find here. I have a verification form that I'm going to use, but again, for sake of time, I want you to open the PDF that I have added to this presentation so you can see what that is. And then the principal is going to review our referral documentation and conduct his own classroom observation. So yes, the principal is going to do an observation of the student as well. And then once they've done that, they're going to verify that they've done that with their digital signature, and I'll most likely do what you all have been doing that have received 504s from me and signed via DocuSign. Then it will go to the executive director, who will also review the referral documentation. So now it's not just us as an SST team having a meeting. Then teachers go back and do interventions. Then we reach out because they're not working. Then we have another meeting with the diagnostician. These are the steps. So it actually involves now the principal and the executive director. Okay. Let's see. Now, the key considerations are to incomplete documentation. I need you to understand may be returned by the principal, ED, or special Education Central Evaluation Team. So if we haven't completed a step or inputted something into the MTSS system, I'll make sure it happens. Okay, don't worry, but it can be pushed back. SST chairs will receive an email notification and will log into the platform to resubmit their corrections within 48 hours. And then email notifications will continue for 7 days, and the MTSS team will be notified, prompting follow-up with the campus. Okay, that's if we have something that is incomplete. Special circumstances, there's always a special circumstance. So parent requests, outside evaluations, and obvious disabilities. These are all special circumstances. So let's get into it. Parent requests will follow this step. So you have a parent request. You're going to schedule an SST meeting within 3 days. That's me. Then the second one, I'm going to complete the MTSS verification process with you and the teacher. And then 3, schedule an SST meeting with the evaluator for consent if there is a need to move forward and the interventions are not working. And I'm sorry, this is parental request. So there is a parental request. So we're going to go ahead and schedule that meeting with the evaluator for consent. Okay, outside evaluation. So somebody comes and they have an outside evaluation and they bring it to me, the SST chair. So here we go. Provide a copy of evaluation to the campus evaluator within 3 school days. Okay. Then schedule an SST meeting to review the documentation. Then complete the MTSS verification form with required documents. And that form just has the different steps or different forms that you need to include in passing your referral into me, the SST chair, and then I will pass it on to the campus evaluator. But it needs to happen within 3 days. So if a parent comes to you and they have, hey, I have some outside evaluations, please find me. Okay. If you can't find me, you can find our diagnostician, which is Neldra, but please find me as the SST chair. Okay. The key points: an outside evaluation does not necessarily mean that the student needs a special education evaluation. Okay. SST committee members should discuss what type of interventions the student requires to achieve success. So again, please bring any outside evaluation forms that parents bring to you to me so I can do the next steps. Here are a few reminders. Campus staff who receive the written parent request or outside evaluation must date stamp it with the date it was received. So they give it to you today, then you write that date down so that you know, and then I'm going to write on it when I receive it, when I received it as well. Okay. Second step, campus staff who receives a written parent request or outside evaluation must turn it into the SST chair. So you as the teacher or whomever it is will turn it into me. Third step, the SST committee must meet with the parent and the student's teacher within 3 school days of receiving the parent letter or outside evaluation to discuss concerns, review data, and create an intervention plan. So within 3 days. And then number 4, once the verification process is complete, that means I have gone into the MTSS system. I have put in there the request and we've discussed interventions and all of that's in the system. Then the SST chair invites the campus evaluator to another meeting to obtain consent or provide the refusal. Okay. So on here again, if you look in the PDF form of this presentation, you will see the parent request steps and you'll see the outside evaluation steps. So when we get to that point, we'll be able to refer to those documents. Now, sometimes there are obvious disabilities, okay, and there are steps to that as well. So what are some examples of an obvious disability? Students with significant health or medical needs, okay, cancer, that's an obvious need, okay. Students with significant cognitive or developmental delays. Students may be tube fed, have genetic disorders such as Down syndrome, be unable to communicate, are blind or deaf, having missing limbs, etc. Those are quite obvious. Those are obvious disabilities. We don't need to research to find out if they have a disability. We can see. Okay. SST chair steps for an obvious disability. So a parent comes in and they have one of these obvious disabilities. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to schedule an SST meeting within 3 school days of enrolling. That's going to be me, the parent, the teacher, and depending on what the disability is, the other correct participants for that meeting will be invited as well. I will complete the verification process. Then I will schedule the SST meeting with the campus evaluator for consent. Okay. The key points. Now this section here has to do with The 504, if there's a student that has a 504 plan from another school coming in, or a disability. So the campus CRC, number one, must always enroll the student at the student's zone campus. Number two, the general education teacher will immediately notify the 504, that's me, and SST chair, that's me, and the 504 chair 3 will meet with the parents and initiate the 504 plan. So I have some kids that come in that have ADHD, different disabilities. And so they have a 504 plan. I have to have a meeting with that parent to put them into our system here. Okay. So this is what this is talking about. Then the schedule an SST meeting with the parent within 3 school days of enrollment. And then the last one, 5, I'll obtain consent following the verification process. And here are some resources for you. Again, on the PDF version of this, you should be, I don't think I can click on it in the video, but on the PDF version of this, these are all everything that you saw in the presentation linked on this one page. So in case you have any questions, you can click here to access those documents easily. And then I just want to say thank you for joining me for this training. Please make sure that you look at the information that I have provided for you here. But most importantly, you all, if you have a student, just in a nutshell, who has a disability and you feel like an obvious disability, please come to me so we can discuss next steps. If you have a parent that brings you a parent request for an evaluation, please bring that date, stamp it, write it down when they gave it to you, and I even put the time and bring it to me, and I'm going to date stamp and time stamp it also, and then I'll take it from there. Please don't hold on to it. Okay, bring it to me because I'm going to write when you gave it to me. And then also, if you have any 504 kids that come to you, please make sure that I know that there's a new 504 student on the campus, so we can have a 504 meeting here on the campus to get them in our system, and I can make sure that all the teachers have the 504 plan. All right. If a student is struggling academically, you tried your own interventions, or you're confused about what the interventions could be, please come to me and I can help you. We'll set up an SST meeting and we will go through some interventions that you can use with your students. And then after such time as you feel like none of this is working, I'm really concerned, then we can also go into the process that you learned here about referring for an evaluation, okay, for services that can give them more support in the classroom. So again, thank you so much for 17 minutes and 42 seconds of your time.